Hey guys, this is Karen. Welcome to our podcast. And today we're here at EmpowHER. EmpowHER is a podcast that supports women, and we speak about women empowerment, how they've navigated their challenges in their early career. And we speak with women across Canada, across the world, and women who are building their careers to a very large extent. Today, we have yet another guest, and her name is Jane, and she's doing an awesome job in whatever she's doing, and I'm very excited to chat with her today. And before I say any further, I'll let her introduce herself. Jane, off you go.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, my name is Jane Danoczi, and I am an avid researcher, but I do love numbers and maths and what they can do and how you can manipulate them. But one of the other aspects is nature. I love going out in nature and hiking and moving around, looking at the sea and the clouds and the sky. And I always marvel at how nature has conquered mathematics, prime numbers, chaos, talk, and all the other aspects of science that confuses mankind, and how nature has actually conquered it all. So that's a little bit of my background.
I'm very excited, Jane. This is so exciting. Well, for the audience, though, I'm sure that maybe they might not be super familiar, but I know you've worked at the military, you've worked across 5 countries now, lots of exposure, lots of experience. Maybe I'll ask, this might be, I'm putting myself ahead maybe, but maybe I'll ask, when did you first notice that, when did you first notice that belief that men are more superior, and how did that shape your early career and your early experiences?
Interesting question, Karen. I never realized really that men were superior. I think that is something that families condition their children to believe, like that the males are superior to the females. I grew up with my sister, family of girls, and we were always pushed to excel. Both my sister and I did excel in our various fields at school. So I was one of the top maths and science students at school. But what was interesting is that in my last year of school, I was called into the principal's office and told that I should be awarded the maths award for the top student. And then they said, but they didn't want to give it to me because I was a woman, and they wanted to give it to one of the guys in my class because they felt that he worked harder and he would benefit more from the award than I would.
And that's very interesting because usually in schools, we see females, we see women doing really well in certain subjects compared to men, for example, humanities, English, and all those kind of subjects. When we see women kind of getting older, we start to see their strengths, their academic strengths almost getting dismissed and redirected as they grow older because they get dropped out of school. So how do you think we as a society can do better for women, for female, so that their strengths continue to grow? And what are your thoughts on this?
That they do excel at school, they do excel in the workplace, but I just feel that the continuous battering in the workplace, that being told that you're not as good as the male counterpart and being overlooked and not being recognized, does actually wear the women down. And after a while, you just feel like, well, if you can't be your own boss, then you might as well just pack it in and rely on other people. What I also find is in a lot of families that the women don't get the support from their mothers.
Mhm.
Mothers and fathers should be providing far more support to their daughters. It's not there. It's right through society. It's not in the family home. It's not in the workplace. And like I'm saying, even at school, I question the commitment of school teachers to actually recognize female excellence and their academia performance. So society has got a lot of waking up to do. Women have proved themselves over and over again that they are as good or as, if not better. I do think that testosterone and those kind of aspects that the male characteristics has to deal with day in and day out stops the male from actually performing to the peak. We don't have that problem. And I feel that we could do far better as a world if we just recognize and allowed women leaders to actually control, to be part of,
Yeah,
making the big decisions. I think the world's in a
right.
mess because the females aren't making decisions. We used to have the Queen. We used to have Merkel. Okay, we used to have some really strong women leaders, and now we haven't got them, and the world's a mess. We need
Mhm.
women leaders.
But why do you think girls are always the first ones to be taken out of school in many communities? Why is that the case? Why is it always female? Why is it always women? Why not men? Mhm,
I'll tell you why.
mhm,
Because we are stuck on religion. I mean, I'm not quite sure whether we should go there, but I mean,
mhm,
like, what religion would make a male a creator? Everybody knows that females are creators.
mhm,
I mean, when you look at the modern religions and everybody kind of like is relating to them. Why? I mean, the
mhm.
pagan religions all had female priestesses, and they were balanced. And you had the female Viking, they were balanced. Because of the modern religions, the world is in a mess.
I know that you've also written a book. You've written a book that's very exciting, and I want to talk about this a little bit more because I feel like the book deserves more recognition than what it has, and I think it's very excited to be talking about it. I know that your book documents sexism both in mining and also military. Maybe I'll ask you, what compelled you to write this book at the time?
I wanted to show how, as a woman who wanted to be a career woman. When I was at school, which was in the 60s and the early 70s, the opportunities for women was a housewife, nurse, and maybe a school teacher, school teachers, those kind of aspects. There wasn't anything really in the scientific field. And I loved science and maths. And my final class was just, like we were like three girls in the class, and the rest was guys. And I asked the guys, okay, that were in the science field, I didn't know what was out there to actually research. And I said, okay, what are you doing after school? Because as far as I'm concerned, I was going to go into the male field no matter what. And they said they weren't quite sure, but it was in South Africa, and they had to do 2 years of military service. And then I thought, and they said they are going to decide there, because that's when the boys become men, and and they kind of like settle down, they get the. And I thought, brilliant idea! I'll have 2 years to decide what I wanted to do. So I
Right.
joined the military. And then there was so much research in the military that I just like loved it. I at the time I got put into weapons analysis, and then with all the analysis that I was doing on the alignment of the 76 mil gun and the 140 mil guns, and I was involved in some of the missile firings and all of those kind of like technical aspects, setting up target areas in Namibia and all of that kind of thing, that my boss said, you've got to go and do officers course. So anyway, I did my officers course. We started off with 33 guys and 3 girls in my squad, and finished off with just me and 27 guys. That completed the course in my squad. And then I became the only female weapons officer, like at that time. So yeah.
Right. Wow, that's very exciting. I feel like, well, can you walk me through a little bit? So I know earlier in your academic journey or in your experiences that you've had, there was an imbalanced ratio of both men and women compared to now, maybe when we look at workplaces, we see more of an equality. And maybe this is still things that are improving. Maybe we're not so much there yet, but do you feel like there's been a huge shift and a huge change in the past maybe decade or maybe 3 decades that we've had so far?
There has been a shift, I agree with you, but I think the shift hasn't become about because women wanting to achieve or a change of attitude. I think it's come about because no longer can a household finance a family on one salary.
Mm,
It
right.
has to be two salaries, and it's a matter of survival that the women are going out to work and actually, like entering the workplace more. So I think it's more an economic push change, because at one time, that you one man, one salary, and you could have a nice house, and now it's just becoming far more, you know, like you can have two people earning a salary and you still are struggling to buy a
Yeah.
house. It's an economic reason more than an attitude change.
Right. And maybe looking at maybe 3 decades ago when you were earlier in your kind of career journey, did you ever imagine that you would ever do a PhD? And now when you look back, do you feel like you've come along a long way?
I didn't think I would ever do a PhD. One of the reasons is, like, initially at school I was rather naughty. I mean, I got good marks for maths and science, but I
Yeah.
used to bunk classes, and we yeah, it was terrible. I think at one time I even tied my teacher's shoelaces together, and I was really disruptive, and I was always made jokes. And one time the teacher told me to take over the class because I had them all laughing and I was clowning around, and he knew he wouldn't, and he was also having a fit of laughter, and he knew he couldn't control himself or the class. He said, just take over. So yeah, I've always been a little bit good naughty, not nasty
Ah,
naughty, good, no,
right.
good naughty.
Right. That's
um
awesome though. Yeah.
Getting lots of pranks. So yes, I didn't really see myself. I was actually bored at school,
Well,
so you know, like I found it wasn't stimulating. You know, when I look back, it wasn't really stimulating enough. I know, like maths, I used to finish my schoolwork and my homework, and then I used to have the rest of the class used to bid for my book to copy for their homework, and then the teacher used to give me another textbook so that I could try and keep me quiet and work from another. No, I was a terrible student.
well, you've come a long way though. You've come a long way. You're doing your PhD, right? That's
And I
awesome.
didn't enjoy my undergraduate, but as soon as I started to do the masters, it was superb. And the
Right.
PhD is absolutely marvelous. And working with the supervisors and discussing the research and putting out the information and then delving into why you come up to the various decisions, it is a wonderful experience.
I'm also wondering, like, those experiences that you had, like, early on, how do you think they shaped your scientific career, right? The experiences that you had at the military, the experiences that you had at university, how did you think they shaped your scientific experience? Was it kind of the similar kind of experiences you had at workplace, for example?
It's not that it shaped. Whenever I got in somewhere, I see gaps or places where there should be improvements.
Mm.
I mean, it the military, we were just told we were meant to be doing filing, and then I saw this math, and then we had one of the first computers, and I taught myself programming, and then I was doing a whole load of mathematical, and I was wrote a program to dig out the minesweepers because they were getting charged and all of that kind of thing. And then when my boss saw that, he just said, I've sent this to graduates, you know, like for the last 3 years, and no one's been able to solve the problem, and there you are, you solved the problem. Yeah, I don't know, I just feel I just fit in. They wanted at De Beers, they wanted to do microwave sorting, and we actually changed an M17 radiometric sorter and changed that to do microwaves, and busy with all of that and looking at fields and responses on different rocks and different rock types, because, you know, like with the diamonds, there's all the different rock types, and looking at how they react when you excite them, or you pound them with microwaves and the different response. Anyway,
Yeah.
I've always got things, and then I moved into X-rays, and then I moved into acoustics, and then I moved into XRF and XRD, and all the different technologies with, you know, that opens it up. You know, as soon as you start thinking, well, can I try this and can I try that, and then you try all the different technologies, and
Mm.
then got sick and tired of the sexism there, and then I started my own company, and then I decided it was getting too dangerous. I had a little daughter, and I wanted to go somewhere safe, and then Canada offered me a job, so I went off to Canada
Yeah.
and started to design a plant, and yeah, and then
Yeah.
yeah, got into ore sorting. So now I do
Mm.
upgrading and ore sorting with all the different technologies.
That's exciting though. It's very interesting you spoke about your daughter, right? I feel like when you get older and you have different priorities like family responsibilities, prioritization, right? Do you feel like all those things kind of influence your decisions in some kind of way?
They do,
Yeah.
they do.
Hmm.
um I always questioned myself about having, I always wanted a child, but I thought, when I'm mature, when I'm responsible and I'm mature, and finish my 30s, and I think, oh, I'm still not that responsible yet, and all of that kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
I had my daughter when I was in my 40s, but I decided, like, I'm never going to mature. I'm never going to be responsible. So if I don't have a child now, it's not going to happen. So I better go and have a child.
Right. No, that's so fair, right? And you also told me how you moved to Canada. Do you feel like Canada and South Africa, those working experiences were different for you?
Very much so. So, in South Africa, when I was consulting, I worked in Lesotho, worked in Botswana, Namibia, and yeah. So in those countries, okay, one of the things to mention is they didn't have any washrooms for women. So when you go into the mine and do the job, there's no showers, there's no changing facilities, there's no washrooms, there's
Yeah.
any of that.
Mhm.
And then I was doing a job where I was looking at the chute from underneath a piece of equipment, and it was hanging down on the floor down. And I asked for slings so that we could tie ourselves up and then work underneath the piece of equipment. And then we were all set up and so started working. And then the manager came along and said, we need our slings, because we've got a contractor that we want to work. And they took our slings away because they just felt the male contractors were more important than the female contractors. So we had to tie up our belts and hang and hold on to each other and carry on the work. That wouldn't be allowed in Canada.
Right.
So when you're on the mines, like your laborers always, like always on the back of trucks. That wouldn't be allowed in Canada. People are cycling around, the roads and just at the mine and everything, on bicycle to get.
Mhm.
You don't have to wear helmets. That wouldn't be so. No, the safety. It's I just feel we call it a bit of a nanny state in
Mhm.
Canada. People
Mhm.
don't have to think about their own safety. Like the safety rules cover them. So you're not aware of, should I do this or shouldn't I do that? Well, the
Mhm.
mind's going to take care of me,
Yeah.
whereas you
It's like
actually got to
laid
think
out.
about those things, like
Yeah.
if I go here, could this collapse? Could that, like what are the safety things? You have to look after your own safety in South Africa, and then in Canada, it's all taken care of. And I just think it's too much on the one side and too little on the other.
Right. Yeah. And also at your time with SRC, for example, in Canada, was that more focused on diamond characterizations, or was that kind of revolving around the mining kind of area?
Yeah, more. It started off in the diamonds, but I moved rapidly into the mining area. Yeah, looking at
Right.
ore sorting. Yeah.
Right. And do you feel that way such that, and not specifically to Canada, but just maybe more general overview of the world, do you feel like mining is kind of more of a male dominant kind of industry? And what kind of structural barriers do you think stop women from advancing into those leadership roles?
Okay. I can tell you
Yeah.
what another story that
Mhm.
really upset me, because like trying to get being a woman and trying to get underground or trying to solve a problem, because I know I can solve a problem and those kind of aspects. And then when you go underground and then you're with the guys and you say, well, you're going to go into this shaft or that shaft, and the guys say to you, it's unlucky to have women underground. If anything happens, it's going to be your fault. So
Mhm.
there's a mindset about luck, myths, like women, you can't have women underground. You are fighting against religion, myths, conditioning. There are so many barriers, like with no substance that
Right.
you are fighting against, that you're up against continuously. I mean,
Right.
like, well, like I say, well, why are you underground? Well, I've got this degree or that degree, and I've solved this problem and that problem, blah, 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 blah. Oh, but it's unlucky. And if anything happens, then it's still your fault.
How do you feel both sexism and maybe like technical decision making intersect in the mining environments? Like, do you think that intersection of both sexism and technical decision making sometimes is difficult because one thing comes in between the other?
Let's put it this way: going into a meeting And then they'll say X, Y, and Z, and I'll come up with a statement. Okay, I've actually had this statement. Okay, and then everybody just ignores it, and then exactly say 5-6 minutes later, a male colleague has actually said exactly the same thing, and everybody turns to him and says, "That's brilliant! You know, this is female, and we could do X, Y, and Z." I mean, like, I've just said practically word perfect. I mean, like, you're not, you are, you feel totally invisible.
Talking about the youth, right? Like, what do you wish young women entering mining or engineering should understand about their own power? And how can they utilize their voice to stand up for injustice if they face any in those environments?
They need to be supportive of each other, and
Mhm.
we actually need to unite and create a forum. So, you know, because the men always form little groups, you know, that was, the women need to, and then the women, there'll be a woman on that table, they try and split up so that they can, like, you know, like, be in, you know, they need to actually unite, come together and say, this is what we're going to want to achieve, and actually go for it, and be more united, more congruent in their strengths. I don't see
Mhm.
any other way.
Right. And maybe looking a little bit like rewinding a little bit backwards, right? Maybe like 20, 30 years ago, if industries truly valued women intellect, how different do you think our industries would have looked like, or how different do you think innovation would have looked like today?
We will be far more down the line. We will be working far more with each other. It will be far more synergy. Women bring synergy usually to the mix. And they always say that with, well, that they've even shown that with female businesses, because they're able to bring in more synergy, that's why they're able to accomplish more and be more successful. So they are able to, that the male psyche is more power, me, I'm on top, whereas the female synergy is more, let's work together, let's see what we can achieve, you know, together, those kind of aspects. And that's what I feel the mining industry or the STEM industry lacks. And because women have actually done quite well, I think, in economics, so that there's still a misbalance between males and females, but that they've been allowed, you know, they've had the door opened up a little bit more in that field. Why do people feel that women can't get dirty? I love getting into a stockpile, looking at the rocks covered in mud and slush, or looking at a tailings pile and looking at the different settling profiles and the water movement and all of that kind of thing, and whether you can see colloidal images. I mean, yeah, why do they think women can't do that? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair, right? And speaking of women and females and girls and young engineers, future engineers or future workforce, what do you think are some of the systemic changes that are required in order for young female or young women's potential to be unlocked, like globally? And maybe you touched on it before previously about it needs to begin with the household, but what else do you think we could do to unlock that potential for females so that they can feel more confident and get out there in the workforce? Maybe
Okay.
something like an advice for me, maybe if you consider myself, just what do you think?
Okay. So one of the things I liked about the military was the teamwork. But you
Hmm.
did get dirty, you know, like having to do leopard crawls across the ground, you know, like, and you're covered in mud and camouflage, and, you know, and sweaty, and actually, you know, um, a lot of times women are conditioned that says your job is to go out there and find a husband. That whole mentality that you've got to look pretty, you've got to look nice, you've got to look, you know, as opposed to, let's see how strong we can get, let's see, working together, what can we achieve as a team, you know, carrying planks, carrying, you know, like, let the woman carry some of the plank, maybe not as heavy, but I mean, yes,
Mhm.
we used to do buddy TV, buddy, okay, PT, physical training. Okay, but luckily I didn't have to carry anybody on my shoulders, but we had to pick up things and carry things, and those kind of things. So maybe a little bit of alliance, but actually get down and learn to get down and dirty with the boys. You know, why do we have different physical training classes for boys and for girls? You know, it should all be together. We were always separate. It should all be together. You know, why is soccer here and then soccer there? But why aren't we all together? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
There's lots of things that could change so that yes, I can score goals better than females. So I want that goal on my team, you know. Yeah, he might be a better goalie, you know, whatever. Yes, you know,
Yes.
can split, dribble, whatever. Yes, yes.
So speaking about this, because you've worked in so many different phases, right? You've written a book, you're doing research, you were part of the military, part of the mining parts as well for a little bit. If you were to look back and look at your younger self, what do you think your younger self would be the most proud of today?
I think my younger self would just be awestruck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it sounds like you're doing so many things and it's very exciting and it's very inspiring, right? Because it's very rare to see someone continuously improving and working on themselves despite years of experience. You know, usually this is my kind of from my observation. I feel like usually people have worked for maybe 2 decades or 3 decades, and they're kind of like there's a little bit of a pause. Like people pause in terms of improvement. You know, people don't see the need to improve themselves. But the fact that you're doing that so actively and like working on yourself, learning new knowledge, doing your PhD, I think that says a lot, and a lot of people need to learn from this. So this is awesome. Speaking about this too, what do you hope your legacy will be for women in terms of mining and science? If there's some kind of legacy you want to leave behind and you want people to remember you for, what do you think that would be?
Well, okay, like you were discussing there, what I've really, when I look back, my whole philosophy of life is setting new challenges. So when I've done the one challenge, is setting another challenge. I've actually even done triathlons. I've come last in a triathlon, but other people have bombed out and I've finished. I set myself challenges and I will finish. You know,
Yeah.
okay. So I challenge myself and I haven't stopped challenging myself. And that's what I like about doing this PhD with my supervisor. They challenge me the whole time and I just, you know, and I'm loving it. So it is embrace challenges. You know,
Yeah.
like look beyond. Yes, you are going to be knocked down and chopped down. That's what life does to you. And
Right.
my mother philosophy was life is never fair.
Mm.
Yes, life is never fair. So embrace those challenges and just see what you can do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Embrace
absolutely right.
challenges.
Yeah, 100%. And to anybody maybe who's hearing our podcast here today, if you wanted to leave them with any kind of message, what do you think you would tell them? And I think you've already kind of said embrace your challenges,
Yeah,
but if there was,
if
yeah,
you embrace the challenge, you'll be surprised at what you can do.
yeah, 100% right. Well, I want to say to the audience at some point when they'll hear this podcast, I want to say, Jane, thank you so much for being part of this podcast because this means so, so much to me. And I feel like over the past hour, when we were talking about ourselves and talking about you and your journey, I feel like you're such an inspiring person to me because I've always thought about I've always thought about it this way, right? So that you only can do so much at a certain age. And then after that, it's kind of like you turn stationary in terms of your curiosity. But you are a living example to me, and that means so, so much to me. And I hope that I can be at least maybe 1% of what you're doing when I grow up. So thank you so much,
Excellent.
Jane.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you,
yeah,
Karen. Okay, then. Lovely
yes,
talking
of
to you.
course.
Yeah, thoroughly
Yes,
enjoyed it. And yes, you made me think
thanks.
a little bit more about myself. So thank you very much.
100%. And maybe I'll tell the audience at some point when they hear this, if they have any comments, questions, concerns, they can leave it in the comment section. And we would both love to hear what everyone thinks about this. So once again, thank you, Jane. And with that, I'm just going to say to the audience, thank you for listening.